What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for cooling with Jay as always. So unfortunately, this was supposed to be a review of the V4s model, but unfortunately when I got home I found out that the audio didn't record for some reason. It was all plugged in correctly, but for some reason the GoPro just didn't pick up the audio. So I had two choices. It was either scrap the review of the V4s or to just go ahead and kind of talk over it. But again, I promise in the future I will get a chance to re-ride the V4s and do a full review. But I decided that since this was my very first experience, I didn't want to ruin that. You know, hearing the exhaust, riding the V4s, feeling the suspension, the weight difference, all of that. So with that being said, again, thank you for cooling with Jay. I truthfully apologize for this. I really wish the audio would have came through. For some reason it didn't, and here we are. So in short, my friend was out of town and he wanted his bike to ride the very next day, but unfortunately they were closed. So he asked me would I be willing to pick up his V4s for him, and then of course in return he said, hey man, you can do a cool video on the bike, which I greatly appreciated because I already wanted to do a review of the V4s, being that I own the V4 base model. So for those of you who don't know, obviously there's about a $7 grand difference between the V4 base, or just the V4, and the S model. Okay, so what you get, bone stock differences are you get the lithium battery, you get the S suspension, so you get the fully electronic suspension, right? And of course you get the wheels. So in total saving, it's about 8 pounds difference between our two. Obviously there's feeling difference because there's less rotating mass and all of that, but yeah, those are the main three things you get in, in between mine and his. So obviously, as y'all know, I chose the V4 base model because for me, I couldn't justify a $7 grand difference for somebody who is a newbie rider. So I wanted to give my review from somebody who is a newbie rider on AS to see if I could truthfully feel the difference between the both. And of course, as you probably already saw, he has the Acura exhaust on his bike. I have the Competition Works, so we both have aftermarket exhaust on ours as well, so completely different sounds as you heard in the beginning of this video. So with that being said, let us get into my review of the V4s model. So of course, first things first is just pulling it around, getting it outside of the place where he got the 520 conversion kit. Oh, also forgot to say that as well. His mod he got upgraded was from EBR, was he got new levers. The 520 conversion kit was the big one. So mine is steel, and his of course has a lot of titanium and less weight, which of course means less rotating mass. In short, he saved about 2.8 pounds. So on top of everything else, from his exhaust, the battery and the rims, to that, now he saved a lot of weight. So my plan is in the future to have us both weigh our bikes to see what our bikes are at now. I still have some more mods coming, and as does he. He's actually going with carbon rims soon. So with that being said, the first thing I've noticed was, of course, the way as I'm pulling it around in the parking lot, getting it into position to shoot this video. I could definitely, just leaning the bike side to side, kind of standing over it, I could definitely feel the less physical mass. Obviously, once the bike is moving, that weight kind of goes away, but just shifting it around the parking lot, I can instantly tell his bike was lighter. How much significant lighter, I can't really say. I could just notice instantly that it was lighter. So with my bike, I have Sachs dampener, rear forks, and rear shock. Obviously, he has Öhlins dampener and Öhlins electronic suspension. So I do not have an Öhlins dampener or anything Öhlins on my bike. So instantly pulling out, out of the parking lot, getting onto the road, I could somewhat feel it was a lot softer. Obviously, first initial thought of his exhaust is it's quieter than my exhaust. Also, my exhaust kind of exits higher up. For those of you who've obviously seen my bike or my older videos, my exhaust sits higher up, closer to my ears. His exhaust is lower, somewhat almost under the belly, right? So he has obviously two exits. The one on the left is facing down, and of course the one on the right side is facing upward, but again, not as high as mine. So I could instantly tell, like, there was less. Not saying I wouldn't suggest to wear earplugs, but I would definitely say the decibel is much lower on his bike than compared to mine. Also, with that being said, back to the exhaust for a second, is that his has a deeper tone to it. I would say definitely higher in the rev range. Mine more sings, has a higher octave. For those of you who have any musical background, mine's definitely a higher octave. His is definitely a lower octave. His is kind of more of a punch, right? Mine's kind of more of a punch and like a rattle at the same time. So mine's more of a raspy kind of sounding. His is more of a clearer tone, if that makes any sense. So that obviously that comes to pure preference. I will definitely say, his bike down low, I definitely like that more of that deeper tone, but higher in the rev range, which I got to do on his bike. I will definitely say that I loved how mine is the higher octave. It sounds more like a V4 to me, in my opinion, than the Acura exhaust. But like I said, it's my opinion, my review. Take it with a grain of salt. So while I'm getting on the freeway, kind of moving the bike back and forth, I can definitely feel a suspension difference. Because like I said, all of his is Öhlins to top of the line stuff. Mine Sachs. So, and again, there's gonna be some clear differences anyway. And of course, the weight, right? I had it in the sports setting. I left it in the same setting that he had, full power mode. I did increase his traction control, and I increased his wheelie control, meaning that it was more intervention. That's basically what that means, going higher in the number. So I put those to my settings, but I left his engine setting and his suspension setting in sport. So I didn't go into race and I didn't go into street setting, which of course will definitely change how his suspension setup works. Mine, I can adjust, but of course it is a manual thing. So I would have to pull over to the side of the road and manually adjust my forks, whereas of course his is on the fly. He can go into a system, change some settings, and then poof, he's off again. Now, when it comes to suspension, depends on who you talk to. Some people, when it comes to full-on racing, going to the track, they don't want electronic suspension, right? They want something. And also, a side note is that also anything that's electronic is set up for a very generic weight, right? So it's not designed for, let's say you're 190 pounds. And again, I don't know the official stats. Let's just say it's set up for any person from 175 to 210. And on top of that, the internals on any shocks, anything that comes with the bike isn't going to be as good as buying it straight out of a box. Does that make any sense? I'll give you another reference, right? When you go and get speakers put in your car, right? And you get those like the 212 set that come fully pre-made in a box, even though it's the same kicker subwoofer, that kicker subwoofer isn't made the same quality as if you bought the same kicker 12 individually. And the same thing goes from here. Okay, so the internals of this Öhlins shock aren't as good of quality as if you would to buy the Öhlins shock by itself separately. And of course, most people would just go with the manual Öhlins suspension over going electronic. But again, that's personal preference. Everybody's different and all that. I'm just throwing it out there so that people understand and know who don't know. Okay, so my plan in the future is to go with, I've already ordered the Öhlins dampener, and I will probably get the Öhlins rear shock. Okay, I will leave probably the sax forks. Excuse me. I will probably leave those the same. Also, it's also tough to feel where the weight differences is. For those of you who are curious, like like how much weight do you feel? Well, you also have to understand that both of our bikes aren't stock. We've both shed about just with our exhaust alone, we've shed about between 10 to 15 pounds a piece just with that, right? And of course, he shed another 2.8 with the 520 conversion kit. So it's tough to really feel the difference just because they're not bone stock. He also has the Ducati spacer on his throttle, which means his throttle has no play whatsoever. So that's also something else as well that was a definite feel from mine. So I'm definitely getting the spacers put into my bike. That's one of the mods I'm also adding on soon, is because so I can get rid of all that throttle play. So that was cool as well to have that instant feedback from pulling the throttle. Definitely more wind noise because he doesn't have a higher windscreen, so I could definitely feel more in my chest than I do on mine. That was one thing as well. Also, his levers had way more adjustability than mine as well. So we both have aftermarket, but mine are the CRGs, and they don't. There's a limit to how far you can adjust them. Where his, you can pretty much adjust them where the bite point is pretty much right at the handle. So, which is weird, but if you wanted to, you can do it. I will say, as far as heat, again, for those of you curious, obviously it's cold outside. I would have to wait till it's a hot day in the summer and then ride both bikes to see which bike is kind of cooler, And of course, he has a different filter as well. So he also has the added filter that comes when you get the Acura exhaust as well. So there's a lot of upgrades that we both have. So all right, guys, to wrap up this video and of course get to the part that everybody wants to know is it worth the money? So I will start with the things I can definitely feel the most. I could definitely feel the weight difference, again, moving the bike around in the parking lot and also in my garage when I was moving around to take some cool photos. You should also check those out on my Instagram page. So that part I could definitely feel. I could definitely feel the Öhlins steering dampener probably the most out of everything, just because on my bike, I definitely get more speed wobbles for sure than his. So that could be a combination of the steering dampener and the suspension, but I definitely have more speed wobbles than him on his bike. I did a lot of pulls, as I'm about to do right now, against his Mustang, because we were having some fun revving back and forth, and of course he took off and I took off after him or whatever. But that was definitely one. Of course the sound was definitely great, but the overall question is it worth $7 grand? And like I said, for most of us, what I'm doing right now is what we're going to be doing. Most people maybe maybe might hit one track day or no track days. All they're doing is riding around town, flying past cars, freeway cruising and riding, and maybe an occasional twisty road, but not to the level of dragging knee like some people are. So looking at it from a rookie standpoint of something that I do in just commuting every day and just regular riding. Like I said, in this video, I went through some twisties as well to kind of feel it, and I did feel differences. I'm not arguing that there's definitely a difference between going with Sachs and Öhlins, for sure. There's, you know, stats to prove it on the track, but at my skill set of riding, I can't say it was $7,000 worth. Now, like I said, I have to put an asterisk mark next to that, because at the same time, you know, I can't guarantee that, you know, because like I said, there's so many differences in our two bikes, you know, like different things we've done. So it can be a mix of numerous things because there's so many mods. But overall, I will say I don't think it's still worth the $7,000. I can definitely see the benefit to it, especially ease of use, or just, you know, pressing the button to get softer suspension, or same button to get firmer suspension. So that's cool to have, and that's definitely a bonus. But if we're talking about saving a few pennies, like I've heard a lot of people say, they'll just save the money and just do, you know, Öhlins race suspension and not even go the electronic route. They'll save the $7,000. They'll spend. I think the rear shock is $2,000. And I believe the front forks Öhlins is like $2,800. So you save yourself $4,000, and then you can get an exhaust. Now, obviously, you don't have the rims that this does, or the battery. But like I said, there's ways of getting similar performance without having to go the electronic route. So guys, with that being said, thank you for cooling with Jay as always. Like I said, man, if I could do it all over again, I'm still happy that I bought the base model. I can see some benefits of the S model over the base, but I'm still completely happy with what I have. Like I said, if I could take anything off the S model and put it on mine, it would definitely be the rims. Obviously for weight savings and for look. I love the kind of 3-spoke design. If they made that 3-spoke in a carbon fiber, that would be, I'd be sold. I love that look. I don't care for the very fat, meaty carbon wheels that are out there. I just don't, it doesn't appease me. But that's, again, my own personal taste. So, yeah, I would take that and probably the battery out of the two. They can keep the Öhlins electronic suspension. So yeah, guys, with that being said, as always, thank you for cooling with Jay. Again, I am really truthfully sorry that the audio didn't work. It's just one of those things. I will try to get it fixed, obviously, and then reshoot the video of kind of me riding and going through all the different suspensions. And with that being said, I will see everybody in the next video.